Let's kick off a little read between the lines. Fire it up, Brady.
Let's start off with the LA Rams cornerback, Jalen Ramsey, saying, "We oozing with confidence as well. Don't forget about who we are over here." Read between the lines, Will.
I think that the LA Rams, and particularly the defense, for as much as we talk about them because we're worried about the Bengals offensive line, but the story, everybody who's picking the Bengals is saying, oh, you can't bet against Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's unstoppable. Well, you know who doesn't think that Joe Burrow's unstoppable? The LA Rams, Von Miller, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey. And Donald and Miller might vocalize it a little, but in like a kind of a funnier way. Donald just isn't going to say anything. He's just going to show up and be an animal. But Jalen Ramsey likes to talk. And I read between the lines, and I'm thinking that they're doing the thing. And I love this, by the way, as somebody who's betting on the Rams and picking the Rams to win. Yeah. They're doing the thing where they invent a chip and they put it on their shoulder. And they can't believe that the whole world loves Joe Burrow and he can't be stopped. And that's what they're doing, I think.
Yeah, so the last 3 Super Bowls, the team with the worst record coming into it has won. And obviously Cincinnati's in that position. They're kind of that hot team right now that kind of doesn't know what they don't know, and they can be dangerous in doing that. But there is this element of like, dude, these guys have been here before.
Yep.
Jalen Ramsey is a stud, and I'm sure he's – I don't know if you change up what you do if you're Raheem Morris, but – you'd think you'd want to match him on Jamar Chase because that's such a big piece of the Bengals offense. You take away Jamar Chase, you take away some of those big play elements. So I'll be curious to see what happens in this game with that regard.
Well, I would think that, and they've been playing Jalen Ramsey a lot more in the slot, as Pete Prisco has pointed out on here. And they don't. Raheem Morris doesn't really like to just have him, follow around one wide receiver. You would think Tyler Boyd is going to be primarily in the slot, and so maybe Ramsey's on him on third downs. We'll see. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think they'd want Jalen Ramsey to be the guy trying to wipe out Jamar Chase. And certainly in that Tampa Bay game, when Mike Evans started to cook, they rotated Jalen Ramsey over there and was like, no. Jalen Ramsey actually may have just rotated himself. He's like, I'm going to get this. No, he got burnt eventually, but
And here's the reality. Those guys can play both sides of the field. This isn't like it's college where we have boundary and field calls and all that.
Yeah.
And to Pete's point, he can't play in the slot. He will play in the slot. So that's something to keep an eye on, is what they decide to do with Jalen Ramsey and how much man-to-man coverage they decide to play, because that's a concern. Like, as good as Jalen Ramsey is, he's probably been the best quarterback in the NFL this year. Jamar Chase has been equally as explosive. So I can't wait to watch that matchup. But, it's going to be curious to see who's oozing with more confidence.
I like
all
oozing.
All right, next one. Let's go to the head coach there, Matt Stafford on the head coach there for the LA Rams and Sean McVay. It's probably unlike any other collaboration I've had with a coach. Read between the lines.
Thank you for trading for me and getting me out of Detroit and not making me go to Carolina. That would have been hell on earth. I thank you so much, Sean. I love you. That's what I read between the lines. No, I think it's
shot at Matt Patricia or no?
No, I don't.
What about Jim Bob Cooter?
Jim Bob Cooter. Man, I told you that I went back to Macaulay, my high school, and did a chapel talk, and I actually talked about Matthew Stafford and how you have these. He was like the focus of the talk. It's like, as a quarterback, you have these different. We saw these different career arcs and different parts of his career. And I, just made the equation of like, that's sort of how your life as an adult is going to be once you get out of here. And then I pointed out that I got to, as an adult myself, use the phrase Jim Bob Cooter on the Macaulay podium. And that was a nice highlight for me. And the high school kids ate that up. So that was kind of cool.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
My serious takeaway from this is something that we talk about on this podcast, the Brady Quinn football show, all the time, is that a lot of times, it's a Carson Palmer thing with Bruce Arians. Sometimes, or not sometimes, all the time, it matters to quarterbacks where they go, who they're with and who they're coached by. And Matthew Stafford, after going through a litany of different coaches and coordinators in his career in Detroit, finally has a guy who thinks this on the same lines as him. They operate on the same page, and it's creating some really good football.
One of the good things about, McVay is I think he's got a great feel for the quarterback and the pressure, everything that's on him. Stafford did not play well down the stretch to finish the season. I mean, in fact, he turned the football over a good amount, which you would expect if it's your first year with a team, with a system. So, and obviously he had the production on the, throwing touchdowns. So it wasn't like he wasn't offsetting that. The playoffs, though, they really have taken pressure off his shoulders by running the football, wanting to get Cam Akers going. And look, it's a wise decision because, dare I say, as good as Cooper Kupp is, like Cam Akers can be a stud in this offense in the system if they just improve their offensive line play for a while. But he's taking some pressure off Stafford's shoulders. And I think you see moments when there's just some of the stuff that you saw in Detroit where like he'll make a throw or take a chance on something. You're going, why?
Yeah.
The throw last week to Jaquiski Tart. I mean, it doesn't matter what your explanation is. It should have been interception. It could have changed the course of the game. Maybe the Rams aren't playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's, I think, the concern in this game is, how McVay goes about really running the football. And I also, feel like giving Matt Stafford that opportunity to take those shots. Does he let him come out firing? Because Stafford's like, as much as like you've talked a lot about him, not as many people have talked as much about Stafford. It's more been about Burrow.
Oh, yeah.
It's really been about like, the Bengals are here because of Burrow. I don't know that anyone's.
I live in a Matthew Stafford bubble. Like if you're near me, you hear a lot about Stafford, but like the general conversation is much more about Joe Burrow.
Right. And I think the other thing is, if we're being honest with ourselves, Stafford has all the pressure. He's one of the oldest quarterbacks to ever start, right? His first Super Bowl at 34 years of age. And if he doesn't do it this year, this whole thing's blowing up after this year. So if he doesn't do it this year, like there's no way they're going to be able to keep it all together. I feel like it'll be really hard to do so. And so I kind of look at it and say, like, this is your moment, man. Like you've got to go and win this. And I feel like that really should better showcase itself because McVay obviously has lost one in recent, history. And this might be one of the only shots or maybe the only shot Stafford gets.
Yeah. And to your point, it's a little bit like the Buccaneers, maybe, where if you win it all, perhaps you convince Von Miller to come back and try to run it back
and all that.
Yeah. Everybody does the whole like let's try and run it. Let's try and win a second one. But you lose the Super Bowl in like agonizing fashion. And we've seen look at the Seahawks and Patriots Super Bowl where like if the Patriots lose and they don't win one for like 12 years, maybe Tom Brady is gone earlier from New England. And if the Seahawks lose and the Legion of Boom is basically disbanded because it all fell apart. And so I think that's a great point that we could see a dissolution if they do lose.
All right, three more. Sean McVay here in talking about his first Super Bowl appearance. He says, you look at yourself in the mirror, you take accountability, and you keep it moving.
I'm not going to tell you guys, this might read between the lines. I'm not going to tell you guys that I pooped my pants and was awed by Bill Belichick at midfield. I'm just not going to say that. I have too much dignity. You know how this works. You can't get me to say it. But yes, there needed to be some accountability taken for my team scoring 3 points in the Super Bowl, which is humiliating.
Do you worry about him? I mean, almost having, I don't want to make light of PTSD, but essentially just those bad memories from the most recent Super Bowl and either being overly aggressive and then putting them in some bad spots or being more conservative again because he doesn't want to necessarily put anyone in a bad position.
Yes, I do. But I think he's got a mirror image across the field in Zach Taylor, who is potentially or likely to do the similar things. And it's Zach Taylor's first Super Bowl, his third year as a head coach. If I don't think he's going to get to midfield and be like, oh my God, Sean, but I do think that it's possible Zach Taylor, maybe I don't think the moment's going to be too big for McVay. I do think too, Brady, the home field factor helps a ton because for the coach in this spot, not that they're going to have a great crowd or anything like that, but you are so intimately familiar, much more so than the Bengals could possibly be with working during a game and just sort of the feel and the setup of the stadium and all of that. So I think that helps a little bit.
I just think the fact that the Rams have only traveled once this entire postseason is huge. The rest on their body that they haven't had to endure long trips besides one trip to Tampa. I mean, that's it. So I think that's going to play one of the biggest factors. All right, two more quick ones.
Yep.
Cooper Kupp. Speed is a luxury. Quickness is a necessity.
Is that like Confucius? That sounds like
no, it's like wide receiver time. I'd love this, by the way. If you want me to start off here,
go for it.
I will say he literally hit the nail on the head as far as the best kept secret about being a wide receiver is, quickness is what creates separation at the top end of routes, which ultimately is what gets you the football and makes catches easier. You don't have to be the fastest guy in order to do that. Like we've seen that, and Cooper Kupp's an example of that. The speed element's like, all right, it's great if you have it. But a lot of times I've seen wide receivers where it sounds stupid, but if you have to start and then stop, sometimes those really fast guys, never really get going fast enough
Sure.
to make you have to get into a back pedal and turn and run. And so they never really push that DB enough. And then they have a hard time getting out of that stop because it takes them, a while to slow down, then get started again. And so sometimes it's like not the guys who are always the fastest, but the guys who are the quickest who end up excelling at the wide receiver position. I think Cooper Kupp's a great example.
It's a perfect real life example as to why the 40-yard dash of the combine is ultimately kind of worthless. You might be fast, but if you like, and the DK Metcalf had a bad 3-cone drill. I get it. He's a great receiver. Nobody's taking that away from him. But Cooper Kupp fell to the second round because he's.
Tell me what route looks like a 3-cone drill, by the way, for DK Metcalf. Like, the Seattle drafted him. They're like, we're just going to run him on a go route or a post route or like anything straight and downfield. Like, what do we run? Like a slant, come back, out, reverse? Like, what are we doing here?
Kupp ran a 4.62, as Debo notes, which is slower than my timed and videotaped 4.59 that I ran in Fort Lauderdale that no one believes I ran.
Okay, first off, I saw you today. No offense. I do not believe.
Oh, I didn't run it today, pal. Okay, like I've been.
Pal. I need to see this video evidence. And then on top of that, I don't think you can break 5 today.
I could probably get 6 today, probably.
How long ago was this?
A long time ago. Like probably
it was laser time. It was hand time too.
It was hand time. There's a lot of wind at my back.
Geez.
I was in really, really good shape too.
Okay. I was on PEDs because baseball's not tested for that anymore.
I was running a bunch. I was in great shape. I'm not I'm fat right now. It was not I had a mustache. It was glorious.
Now you have a beard. That's gonna weigh you back even more.
Right. The mustache
that's not aerodynamic at all.
The mustache was piercing the air and I mean,
think about how many fast guys do you know that have a beard? I mean, Cooper Kupp, but he's not that fast, right? He's a 4.62 guy. I'm saying the fastest guys never have a beard.
You're basically saying I'm Cooper Kupp. I love it. All right, let's go to the final one.
Final one, because you're really itching to get to this thing tonight. Joe Burrow on Zach Taylor. Nobody really even realizes how young Zach is. You even know how old he is? You know his age?
Yeah, he's older than McVay. I think he's 36, and McVay just turned 35. 38.
Zach's a year older than me. So he's the quarterback coach. My last stop in Miami.
Okay.
And I'll never forget. I mean, obviously, we kind of known of each other because recruited in similar lights, like similar years and all that.
Oh, that's crazy.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think he went to Nebraska first.
Yes, correct.
And so kind of knew of him, right? Like Blue Blood, big program. But I walked in the room and he hands me the playbook. He goes, look, he goes, we're about the same age. You've been doing this for a long time. He's like, you're fine. Like you tell me what you need help with and all that. He was one of the coolest dudes about it. And honestly, I'm kind of sad that we talked more about like just general football and life. But I really grew to love him because at that point, he kind of just knew what his role was. And he probably knew what my role was. And I wasn't going to be hanging around there. So he was like, I'm not going to bother this guy with stuff that he doesn't need to be bogged down by. But he's 38 years old. And I think the reality is, it's not that you take a Super Bowl for granted and you go, well, I don't know that I'll ever make it back here again, so I should need to be conservative because this is my only chance. I think he looks at Joe Burrow and says, dude, we didn't expect to be here. We're going to play loose. We're going to take shots. We're going to be aggressive because, well, we're going to have more shots at this. We're going to have more opportunities at this, especially as we get better, in particular up front of the O-line. So I think what basically Joe's saying is like, look, man, like we're both young. Like we're growing this thing together.
I was sort of taking it as a different way, like just people don't really know about him or like, he just doesn't have a ton of experience. To your point about playing loose, I was on Jim Rome's show on Monday and Jim pointed out, he said that he was like, I was down on the field at Kansas City. Right. And he's like, Zach Taylor's walking around with his kids and like wife before the game, and Joe Mixon's playing catch and goofing off, and like they're talking to fans. He's like, they were just so incredible. He's like, I don't say this is like why they won. They were just so loose, and that helps, especially when you're Mahomes comes out slinging, and all of a sudden you're down 21-3. And so I do think there's some of that, and you're probably right. If there was a team that was going to be uptight in this spot, it would be the Rams, and not the Bengals, but. I mean, I do think the lack of experience in big games for Zach Taylor, he obviously has his playoff run, but they just haven't played in any games that mattered. And it almost feels like Zach. I don't want to take away from him because, as you point out, good coach, but like it does feel like it's some with Ed Orgeron too. Like hop aboard the Joe Burrow Express and take it to a title, buddy. I mean, enjoy. Joe's gonna drag your ass to the promised land.
I mean, look, Joe talked about like confidence, and that's something that I've brought up probably a couple times on here with you. It's something that can be like fragile or delicate, but one way to help keep confidence is momentum. And Joe Burrow's had momentum on his side ever since having the greatest season ever in college football, right? Yeah. Like that led into him being the number 1 overall pick. That's led into, even though he got injured his rookie year, he was probably on his way to be the offensive rookie of the year that year.
Yeah, no question.
And then you look at what he's done now. It's like, dude, the guy should be confident because all he's known and all he's done is perform in those big spots. And so he's able to every time he gets in those pressure situations go, been here before, done this. I don't need to view it or feel any different about it. And even though Zach Taylor's inexperienced in that way, he's got the guy on the field who ultimately is what matters most. And he feels comfortable in that spot. So I feel like, look, if the Bengals lose this game, it's going to be because of that offensive line just getting demolished by the Rams front. And it's going to feel, I'm not trying to compare Burrow to Peyton Manning. It's going to feel like that Seattle Seahawks defense versus the Bengals.
Okay.
Like, I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout either.
Right.
But it's going to feel like that.
Or a little bit like Tampa Bay versus Kansas City. Maybe that's even
sure. That might be another fair comparison.
Yeah. And you're not saying that the Rams are the peak Legion of Boom or anything like that. Just that.
No, it's just that that's the biggest mismatch.
It's to your point about that. I do think there's a chance, and I don't want to, again, I don't want to compare it to the Seahawks either, but there's a chance that, remember that the Cam Chancellor hit in that game where you're like, oh, okay, this game is over. Like this, like they came to freaking play, and the snap over Manning's head is a safety, and then
it was done.
And it was, I mean, it was never even close. I like to think that, but shoot, Peyton Manning. I mean, you'd like to think Joe Burrow would be able to mount a comeback, but we also saw with Peyton Manning, like the Seahawks never let up. And
dude, that was a record-setting year for them, right? Wasn't it that year for them?
I mean, every record. Yeah. And that game was a pick 'em too, by the way.
Yeah.